I'd like to congratulate the two appointees that were on consent and they're back again. So thank you. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Monfils. Mr. Vega.
It is wonderful to be reappointed. Looking forward to the next 4 years. Thank you.
Thank you,
Happy New
Mr.
Year, everybody.
Thank you, Mr. Vega. Mr. Buffington.
Thank you. As always, I just want to thank our staff for everything you all do day to day to make this job for us extremely easy. And it's very much appreciated and it doesn't go unnoticed and you guys are just top notch. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Buffington. Mr. Yudd, can you hear me?
Mr. Yudd, I
make
think
any
your
comments?
microphone's off, sir.
There he is.
I can hear you, and greetings to all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Yudd. Mr. Campbell.
I guess there's two, I was talking to a friend of mine. I said, how late in the year can you say Happy New Year's to people before it's like, sorry, you can't say that anymore. And he's like, well, if you haven't said it to somebody yet, and it's the first time you're seeing them, you can Happy New Year them. Anyhow, Happy New Year to anybody we haven't already said that to, and looking forward to a new year and congratulations to our two new appointees again. So thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell.
Thank you,
Mr.
Mr.
Kelly.
Chairman. Second, it's off. Glad to be back for another term. Really happy to be reappointed. Congratulations, Jack, on your reappointment as well. Glad to see you back. I was thinking the same thing about Happy New Year, and I thought, well, didn't we see people already? So that was a finance committee.
That's right.
So we said, so I had to check. I said, yeah, we didn't have a meeting in January. So those I haven't seen, Happy New Year. Hope you had a healthy, happy, and safe holiday. And looking forward to another great year at Loudon Water. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Kelly, Mr. Sultan.
I agree with the previous comments and especially with what Mr. Buffington said about staff, I constantly am amazed at how good you guys are. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Mr. Sultan. You could have said aloha too.
Yeah.
Aloha.
There you
One other item I
Go ahead.
forgot to mention. I saw Mr. Carnes with his family in Wegmans a few weeks ago, and he gave an up-to-minute report that no meters had frozen yet. This was during the real
Yeah.
cold weather.
That's good
So
news.
that was good news.
Sure.
Prince George's County is having their issues currently with water mains. So.
I have a comment about frozen meters. At that time, just get out of town like I did.
Yeah, right.
It'll thaw
except for staff, they can't, they have to be monitoring that stuff, Mr. Sultan. So that's a good point. That now that we're hopefully getting close to the end of winter, maybe we can get beyond the horrible freeze. So staff will at least, the guys out there are working and the ladies working will, get put that to rest. I want to thank Mr. Campbell for filling in for me in December when I was under the weather. But I really haven't done a board meeting since November, so it feels like a long time.
Did a great job, by the way.
You can probably tell. Yeah, he did. So, we can have a straw poll and see if Mr. Campbell wants to take over. And obviously, congratulations on Mr. Vega and Mr. Kelly's appointment. That was a quick, early appointment too. Usually, there's a little bit more deliberation, but that was just stamped and it was good to see that. I could be the first to say Happy Valentine's Day, which I think is coming up. I know that's a big holiday for Mr. Campbell, but buy somebody you love something nice. So that's all I have.
Chair, I want to have one more comment. I'd like to thank all those involved from Loudon Water
Yeah.
put this together. I mean, this is a great document to read and look at. It shows all the breadth of all the accomplishments that's been performed during the last year. So thank you for putting this together. It's always.
Thank you for bringing that up, Mr. Moody. We were all kind of entranced by it earlier. So I'm glad you mentioned that. Mr. Campbell, Mr. Carnes.
Thank you. Yes, that's actually my first comment is we provided you with our 2024 accomplishments brochure, and I wanted to thank all the Loudon Water staff who contributed to another successful year. On March 11th, we will be providing our annual update to the Board of Supervisors Finance, Government Operations, and Economic Development Committee. This update provides the board with an overview of the authority's finances and key activities. And I'm pleased to report that for the 37th year in a row, Loudon Water has received the GFOA Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting for our 2023 ACFR. So big thanks to Sally Deller, Sue Crosby, and Mike Beardsley and their teams for another successful year. National Engineers Week begins next week. As part of the event, Loudon Water engineers Darren Gelder and Jennifer Kaberlein will be presenting at the Academies of Loudon on February 18th to share their expertise with students. The theme of the event is Design Your Future. Update on the Broad Run Phase 2. Substantial completion was reached on January 10th, 2025, and we are actively working toward final completion, which is due May 21st. As a reminder, that expansion brings capacity from 11 to 16.5 MGD. Phase 3 expansion is continuing through design, and Package 1 is scheduled to be advertised for bid this spring, with construction contract award planned for this summer. The 2025 General Assembly opened on January 8th and closes on February 21st. Loudon Water staff are closely monitoring proposed legislation and providing feedback as warranted. Mark Peterson participates through his seat on the VAMWA Board of Directors, and Alan Eccles through his seat on the VWWAA Board of Directors. We also closely collaborate with Loudoun County's legislative liaison, John Freeman. Loudon Water's Business Initiatives Manager, Micah View, facilitates organization-wide reviews and tracking. We've added a new monthly report to the agenda to highlight current legislation that may impact Loudon Water. We will discuss the report and answer members' questions during that section of the agenda. Board members will recall EPA's regulatory process over the past several years with respect to PFAS regulations for drinking water, whereby interim health advisory limits were published in 2022 with extremely low thresholds and were later replaced by higher maximum contaminant levels in the final regulations released in 2024. Following a somewhat parallel process, on January 14th, the EPA released its draft risk assessment for PFOA and PFOS in biosolids. The assessment outlines some scenarios where acceptable risks may be exceeded through land application of biosolids. However, there's much to be reviewed and understood, much like the drinking water process. Loudon Water and its industry partners are actively reviewing the assessment and providing input to EPA, which will provide some real-world inputs to the regulatory process. DEQ recently notified Loudon Water regarding the Broad Run Total Maximum Daily Load, or TMDL, study. The study of water quality impairment on Broad Run has been a DEQ interest for a number of years. It was originally initiated in 2017, but then paused because funding was not available to DEQ at that time. The study is being restarted this year and is a stakeholder in the Broad Run watershed with our reclamation facility, NPDES, our National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System permit, and as a wholesale customer of Fairfax Water, we will participate in the study. Loudon Water has been collecting water quality data in the Broad Run for many years, and some of that may be useful for DEQ's evaluations. The goal of the TMDL process is to determine how to improve the water quality after identifying the causes of water quality impairment in Broad Run. Update on our holiday schedule. We will be closed on Monday, February 17th, in observance of President's Day. In January, we received 1,820 ERCs. 1,479 of those were data centers. Those were originally anticipated to connect in December, but then slipped to the following month. Finance Committee will meet at 8 a.m. on Wednesday, February 26th, and your CIP Committee will meet at 8 a.m. on Thursday, February 27th. That's all I have.
Thank you, Brian. Jewel, has anyone signed up for public comments? Thank you. Someone make a motion to adopt the agenda.
I move to adopt the agenda.
I'll second.
Mr. Bonfield, seconded. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Board committee action. Sean, you have double duty.
Yeah, it's my meeting, I guess.
It's your meeting. The audit committee was crazy, and so was the finance committee. So
Yeah, it was a wild time. I get reappointed and they put me right to work, you know?
Well,
Great. I like it. Start off with the audit committee first. Get to my notes here. Well, we met and had a meeting with our auditors, YHB, Young Barber, and the audit is somewhat accelerated this year because of the conversion of the SAP system later this year. So the thought of the finance staff was to get things moving along rapidly and bring IHP in fairly quickly to get that completed. So that's done and put to bed before we start the conversion. Didn't want to have doing the audit while we're doing the conversion. Was not a good idea to do that. Wouldn't be very efficient. We approved the charter for the committee, and since it's on the board consent agenda, the board has approved it. So no changes were made to the charter. The committee approved a 1-year extension of the YHB audit contract. We had a contract that was approved in 2020 for 5 years. That has expired and is now on 2 1-year extension. And committee agreed to approve the first extension. We thought it was important to maintain consistency with our outside auditors as we upgrade the software, as I mentioned. Let's see, what else we covered there. Just a side note that I've said this before, I think YHB does a phenomenal job. They work well with our staff. I think their audit reports are superior. They're very good. And that comes from decades of experience of reading lots of audit reports in my previous job in finance. There'll be an item on the action. I won't go into too much detail about the contract because there is an item on the action agenda that details the cost and so forth. Committee thought it was best to put that on the action agenda so the board is fully aware of the cost of the contract. And that's the extent of our meeting. We'll have a meeting sometime in the next couple of months. Get the committee updated on the progress of the audit. Any other comments from our committee members at all?
No, you covered it. This is Jim. You covered it very well. And it was very complete. It lasted over an hour, and we had a very good discussion about some of the special items audit, and that's always something to keep an eye on.
One thing I should mention, thanks for bringing it up, Jen. Again, this year, there'll be a single audit. We discussed that last year. That has to do with any entity that receives government funding in the form of grants and so forth, FEMA money, in excess of $750,000. That has since been raised this year to $1 million, I believe, Brian. Just as a refresher, you are considered high risk until you satisfy 3 audits that you comply with all the rules and regulations and so forth. So assuming we pass this year, we're still at high risk, but assuming we pass this year on that audit, we will be categorized as lower risk. And then that means we still have to go through a single audit, but it's a little less intensive and not as complete. And as what's going on with what's going on in our U.S. government right now and the money it's overseas and so forth, I had a laugh that the money that Loud and Water receives compared to what's being sent off to different places, and they don't have to have any kind of a single audit or compliance audit. It's just I feel for you guys. So anyway, not enough said about that. Interesting what's going on. Finance committee, I'll move into the finance committee. That met as well. That was attended in January 22nd. Even though the board didn't meet, the finance committee still was at it in the month of January. We approved the Luckens Elementary Wastewater Treatment Plant Service Agreement. I won't go into detail on that since there'll be a presentation about that a little bit later, but committee approved that to be moved to the board for full approval. And we covered the monthly financial information, and I will say about that is operating revenues are ahead of year-to-date forecast. Non-operating are also ahead of year-to-date forecast, and expenses are below year-to-date forecast. So we're doing well. I won't go into a lot of detail. That's my report.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly, for both of those. Next item is the consent agenda. There's one item on it, which is the audit charter approval. Someone motion that, please.
Move. Also move.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. This is quick. This is just to go over what we reviewed in the Finance Committee, which is that we had an RFP in 2020 for YHB. It went for 5 years through the 2024 audit. We are here. The contract includes 2 1-year renewals for 2025 and 2026. We're recommending that we renew with them due to their experience with us, especially with the extra efforts around the S/4HANA conversion. It would be beneficial to keep the same auditors. The price is up here on the slide for the 2025 and 2026 audit. And I'm happy to answer any other questions.
In 2 years, we're gonna have to rebid the whole 5-year contract out again. is that
Either
correct?
way, yes, we will
Yeah.
have to go through RFP again.
Does anyone else have any questions? Okay, someone want to read the motion?
Move. To move. To approve the 2 one-year extensions of the auditing services contract with Yount, Hyde and Barber to perform audits for the fiscal years 2025 and 2026.
Seconded
Second.
by Mr. Vega, all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. The next item is Kinsey Downs, the Luckett's Elementary Service Agreement.
Hey, good afternoon, Chairman, Board. Always a pleasure to be here, and thank you for having me. I'm here today seeking authorization for the General Manager to sign the Luckett Service Agreement. As we jump into this, anyone on the Finance Committee, if you think I glossed over any things that you guys thought were important, I'm happy to revisit. Additionally, keep in mind the legals always reviewed the agreement and that Loudoun County Public Schools, as well as Loudoun County, has kind of pre-approved their signatory process. All right, the Luckett's Elementary School wastewater treatment plant is located on school property. It's in Luckett's. It serves 4 parcels, the school, the community center to the north, the volunteer fire station, as well as the professional fire station. It is owned by LCPS and operated by Loudoun Water, and we've been there since 2014. We also operate the new wastewater facility that was built in 2022. It's an MBR. It's really good, 7,500 gallons per day. I guess what I wanted to highlight here is that at one time, these all were from county properties, and that when they moved to the volunteer fire station to the professional fire station, we actually had a conflict of interest for the school system. They do not operate wastewater treatment facilities, so they were looking for a good option. One of the options was going to have the volunteer station disconnect, but a board of supervisors, board member initiative directed staff to find a better solution for them. And that solution was the county keep the service area intact and keep them on the system. Naturally, that means Loudoun Water will own and operate a system out in Luckett's. We took this opportunity to do a due diligence on kind of what our standards are and operate a new system. And keep in mind, this matches our developer process. The facility must be constructed at no cost to Loudoun Water and meet our standards. And the developer, the connections in this case, must pay the revenue equalization fee. When we looked at the facility and compared to our standards, we expected a couple upgrades to occur, right? We need some process upgrades to meet that permitted capacity. And we're also looking for some communication and safety concerns. We want a new security fence, new things that meet our standards. And finally, we identified permits and legislative actions needed to make the commission permit, complete the special exception, and convert that fully to a Loudoun Water system. We took all that information and kind of rolled it into a service agreement with Loudoun County Public Schools as well as Loudoun County. This was a very good collaborative effort that kind of met everybody's needs and kind of acted as a roadmap for all parties to execute. Keep in mind that we use this opportunity to actually capture the history as well as the drivers and the next steps. Steps include getting the special exception and commission permit, having the county pay the revenue equalization fee, granting easements and conveying facilities, transferring the VEPD's permit, which is the discharge permit through DEQ to Loudoun Water, and everyone completing the new customer process. Here's just a quick matrix of maybe who owns what in the agreement. Just stepping to the big ones, the special exception and commission permit approval process is being championed by the county, fully supported by Loudoun Water, fully supported by LCPS, and we expect that approval to happen sometime this spring. Upon completion of that, we'll probably submit invoice to the county for ref payments, and they will probably pay that to us. They indicated that they will be paying the full amount for each of the entities on the system. The design and construction aspect of this will be championed by Loudoun Water, but fully reimbursed by Loudoun County. And we expect that to be $609,000 with a component in the agreement where if we go over that, we can have a mechanism to get some more funds. Speaking to the area and the possible easements, I think I'm probably in 3 on the screen of the area. You can see that the main trunk sewer is on LCPS property alone and only the property. We're also seeking a facility easement in the dark blue, and access will be done by the park property to the south of the school system. So we need easements from LCPS on the school property as well as Loudoun County for the park property. Additional notes I just want to make the board aware of that this action follows our developer process. Defining the service area through the commission permit and special exception is required to set user rates. That's our really big hurdle and our first probably main action. User rates will align with Loudoun Water Central System rate schedule. And naturally, I've already mentioned this, but all parties have taken step to have the agreement signed as needed when we're done. In front of you is the recommended motion.
Does anyone have any questions?
One
Go ahead,
question.
Mr. Vega.
The large east. Sorry, large easement to the east of the pump house, is that going to be used? It seems like it's a large wooded area.
So right now, we don't have any plans for it. That's where the old facility was that they replaced in 2022. And we thought it was a good opportunity to have some flexibility in the future if something would come up.
Like that, like flexibility.
Mr. Yudd has a question.
Go ahead, Mr. Yudd.
Thank you, Chair. At the Finance Committee, we had a very thorough conversation. And this project really reflects a lot of really good work by staff. So thank you for that. One of the observations was looking at the needs for the future. If you look at that one slide that was up that had the purple area, it seems like that purple area may allow the treatment facility to actually expand if needed. If you think about the service area right now, it's very limited to just the properties that were named. But if you look at Luckett's in general, there's probably need that expands beyond those parcels. So I think the commentary we had at Finance would be good to be captured in our record of action today, that we do need to keep an eye on the future and perhaps serving a larger area than just the properties today. But this is a great start, great solution. And I just wanted to raise that for my colleagues to give that consideration. We did talk about that at Finance Committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Yudd. But, to that point, what could that site be expanded to accommodate from a gallons per day issue? 7,500 right now. Do we look at, when we size the easement, are we looking at, is there a particular number that we look at?
We didn't look that specific. We do believe that the facility itself can be upsized to meet maybe a 11,000 gallon per day threshold, which does give us a little bit more. Anything beyond that probably is a little bigger footprint, maybe a separate building, but that's speculation right now.
All right. Thank you. Anyone else have any questions? Someone want to read the motion? Who's good at reading today?
I'll do that.
Mr. Bonfils? Sure.
I move the board authorize the signing of the Luckett's service agreement by the general manager and execute the related tasks outlined in the agreement.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Mr. Downs. Another great presentation.
Thank you. Twice.
New business, none. Information items, none listed. So we're on to monthly reports. Sally? So we were anticipating 2,300 ERCs for the whole entire year. And we did how many in January? January. Okay. I'm just jumping ahead. I'm so excited. I'm sorry.
You are.
Strong January as well. So we did 5,000,
Last year.
5,940 in 2024. So as discussed, we had in the finance committee, we had a project that did 2.5 times its what we normally budget for. So we had that surprise, plus we had the April connection, which drove it up as well. But yes.
Was any of this people trying to get in for December before the rate increase? They couldn't get in in time, so
Mhm.
that's why it's in January as well too. Okay.
Correct.
So probably we'll see some sort of latency for February, March, I would think, but we'll see. All right, we're off to a good start. Anyone else have any questions for?
Does anybody know what the biggest month Loudon Water has ever done? I don't know the answer, but
For ERC?
for ERCs,
December, I
The
would
biggest
think.
month?
yeah, in a month,
Oh, in a month?
just 1 month, the number of ERCs in 1 month that Loudon Water's
I
taken
can
in.
get that.
I-
for you.
I-
That's like, that's like Loudon Water trivia.
I believe it's December of last year.
Is it?
2,200.
Okay, I wasn't sure if these were record-setting months or if there'd been bigger months in the past.
It was a record-setting year, so if you just scroll up to that my third page in here with those purple charts, you'll see since the beginning, since we've tracked it
Mm-hmm,
in BI reporting, it's the highest.
yep,
So
wow.
We had one December too, I think, before we did the last rate increase where there was a big number, but
Mhm.
there hasn't been one that big
Yeah.
since. Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. All right, our new monthly report. Mr. View.
A new one. It's a new report. We're in the legislative season right now. We follow this very, very closely. And over the last few years, what we've been doing is bringing a summary of all the activities at the end. We had a lot of good questions and discussion this past year, and had some interest in following a little bit more along the way. So we came up with a thought. We tried this year, and we for these first few months of the year, we're adding in a monthly report. We'll still come probably in April and do the final summary, but thought it'd be helpful to provide some information along the way. So you've seen that we didn't have the meeting in January, so we were gonna, go through a little bit of this context then. But we're gonna take a few minutes and just walk through a few slides here today, and give some highlights. Brian mentioned in his comments that there's a couple different channels that we have to follow this, but we've got a couple highlights and some key bills, and then share a story of really how much influence we've been able to have as an industry in Virginia, and have some good success story here that we'll share too. So with that, Mike is going to walk through these slides, and we'll open it up for any questions that you have.
Thanks, Mark. So as Mark mentioned, this is a new approach to communicating this information. The agenda today is going to just walk us through what our new approach looks like, provide an overview of session activities up to this point, and then key in, highlight several bills that have advanced past crossover that are core issues for us, and then we'll open it up to Q&A. As Mark mentioned, we were really taking a summary of the legislative session, distilling that for the board, and then providing that a report typically in March or April of every year. This new format just allows for better transparency and monitoring of what staff and association activities look like, and give you an opportunity, I think, to ask some questions along the way about what the level of impact is, what are association partners doing in light of our support or opposition or monitoring of certain bills. Sure. Yeah, thank you. And so this year is a short session, 45-day session. Essentially, we have a biennial budget in Virginia. So this is the second year of a budget that was established last year. There were additional revenues in the tens of millions of dollars available for the House and Senate and the governor's office to ultimately work into this budget. I think, as most are aware, the Democrats control both the upper and lower chambers of the Assembly, and the Republican governor holds the signature pen for any law that is passed through the General Assembly. We monitor and participate in this process every year through our association partners. Typically, what we'll see is a kickoff of our association membership meetings and alignment with the kickoff of the General Assembly. And I think for those who are close to it, you know that it's really a compressed timeline, and in some cases in a short session, a bit of a pressure cooker in terms of getting your arms around the bills that are being offered, getting those characterized, and then getting a priority overlaid on those bills. And so that was, again, the case this year. I think we did note in the report, this entire legislative session kicked off in the context of the Richmond water crisis. It did bring our water and wastewater service issues into sharp focus. And I think that was ultimately a good thing, right, in terms of being a part of the conversation. But there was a bit of defense to be played too, right? The original bills that we were engaging with had to do with reporting and accountability in light of critical failures in Richmond. And so that became an industry-wide opportunity to engage on how we actually operate, what's reasonable in light of those, and what are appropriate penalties, right? We're ultimately talking about negligence and gross negligence for failure to comply with some of those provisions. And so to me, that was unexpected for this year. It was driven by a real world critical failure, but it ultimately set up an opportunity cost for what we could engage with and what we couldn't in the first half of session. I think it was mentioned in Brian's comments, Alton has a leadership role with VWWAA, Mark with VAMWA, Kendra with the Virginia Biosolids Council, and then I do coordinating work with the legislative analysts at the county so that we have at least a common understanding of what's out there, how it may impact us, and when it is right to escalate and provide for greater coordination. We're in a position to do that. Again, session convened on the 8th. We are already past crossover, so we're beyond the halfway point of the legislative session. They're going to gavel out on the 22nd. We got one extra day this year because of the Richmond water crisis and kind of a deferral on the kickoff of the legislative calendar. We will very likely be coming back in April with our traditional full summary of the General Assembly report, and then that lines up very well for the governor's actions, which typically I'd say most years we don't highlight it. But because we have a split executive and legislative branch, and I think a lot of party line votes this year, creates some space for additional amendments to be offered through the governor's signatory process, right? They can, the governor can sign, the governor can sign with amendments, or the governor can veto those bills. And so there is a chance that certain items that we favor may not move forward, and certain items that we oppose may take an amended form that's more palatable to us. So that's the big picture. Our key bills this year are in front of you. I want to start with Senate Bill 923. This is, it might seem a bit mystifying at first. Interbasin transfer prohibition. Why would that impact us? We withdraw from and discharge to the Potomac. But we act as a member of a larger association. And typically we don't spend a lot of time reconciling perspectives on any given bill. I think many of our perspectives are shared going into and out of each session, but we certainly spend a lot of time talking about what that impact is and what it really means for providing services and retaining flexibility into the future. The interbasin transfer prohibition bill, I think, has an interesting story. It's really illustrative of the way that we do work with our association partners and how we are able to react and make some impacts in real time, in this case on a bill that wasn't favorable to our industry. And so Senate Bill 923, as it emerged in committee, set forth a prohibition on withdrawal and discharge. If you were going to take out 100 million gallons, you needed to return 95 of those to the basin that you were in. And that doesn't ultimately align with water supply planning and functional interconnects across the Commonwealth. And it was in direct conflict with the permitted project in Louisa County, where a permit had been issued. They weren't under construction. The language of the bill ultimately would have scuttled that program or put it into deep jeopardy. Our association partners engaged in the ACNR committee to express our opposition to that bill. And on our way to securing favorable amendments, we still ended up with a difficult bill that was unpalatable. And so Senate ACNR actually passed Senate Bill 923 unanimously, 14-0, but was referring that bill back to Finance and Appropriations. So this might seem a bit labyrinthine, but this is the way that the legislative process works. And so when we get the bill moving over from ACNR into finance, that creates the opportunity for us. We really know what this bill is at that point. The ACNR had created a substitute bill. Again, it passed unanimously, and it ultimately was incompatible, right, with water delivery, water supply planning, and construction of infrastructure for the future of the Commonwealth, right? And so our association partners reached back out to us and said, like, we had made some strides forward on this bill, but there's certainly in no shape that we can live with as an association. They're ringing the bell, so to speak, for our action brought forth membership turnout in opposition through letters and phone calls that was ultimately very effective. So you had this bill going out of ACR on January 28th. The 29th, we get the call from our association partners that we really need to escalate this as an issue. And so by the 29th, we, as association members, were developing those letters and getting those to both, right, our local representatives, as well as those Finance and Appropriation Committee members. And that bill was, the long story short of that bill was laid on the table in Finance and Appropriations as a result of those critical stakeholders, those people in the water and wastewater purveyor space, saying that this ultimately is incompatible with the future of service in the Commonwealth. There's some other difficult aspects of that bill as it related to grandfathered withdrawals, and I want to bring this up as well. It doesn't directly impact Loudoun Water, but it affects our association membership, and it sets forward this precedent, right, ultimately for how we can interact with our neighbors in the region. And we want to preserve as much flexibility as possible in our supply and demand development.
So Mike, I have a question. And it might be kind of a layman's question, but what was the genesis for that bill? Like where did the concept arise from? It doesn't sound like it came from our industry.
Right. Yeah. So the bill was offered by Senator Stewart. It was really springing from an agricultural issue and a water withdrawal issue between what we think of as commercial and residential development and agricultural development. And we see that every year as an important partition between water interests.
Yes, I have a question. You mentioned the acronym, I believe it was ACNR, where the bill comes. What is the
Yeah,
acronym?
I'm sorry, that's Agriculture, Conservation and Natural Resources Committee in the Senate. So that's just that's the subject matter that they deal with.
Okay, all right, thanks.
So I know that was probably more long-winded than I had intended, but I think that those details ultimately matter. We have to be responsible to our interests. We have to be responsive to our agency, right? And we have to work in coordination as association members to get the outcomes that we're looking for. I think we were ultimately successful in this effort because it was collective action. It was also, as you see in a lot of legislative work, is building a stakeholder coalition too. VACO also stepped out strongly against this bill in the form that emerged from ACNR, and we're able to prevent what I think of as poor legislation from passing or from advancing.
Thank you.
Okay, the next bill is Senate Bill 1319. These are broad PFAS monitoring regulations in the wastewater space. You can think of this as a follow-up to last year's PFAS bill. Last year's bill was House Bill 1085. It set up a system essentially that says we're going to look at finished drinking water quality. If the concentration of PFAS pops past the US EPA MCL, then VDH will take this information from those reports from our water purveyors, send those to DEQ, and then DEQ is on a discovery mission to find and control the source of that PFAS. This bill provides a more direct pathway to that. I think that that's what we get. So These regulations would have quarterly monitoring of PFAS discharges from we'll call it certain industries, right, with known use, either in the production or pre-production side. Importantly, you know, our association's engaged with this bill because it does speak to our regulatory burden and our pretreatment program work. And we wanted to make sure that there are off-ramps for ourselves and for those dischargers in our service area where they may be under a categorical under the law where they would have to comply with this. But if they're showing non-detects or concentrations underneath the regulatory limit, they need some pathway to get out of that monitoring and reporting. And we need some way as well to limit that burden back on us where we're getting reports ultimately that tell us that there is no problem over and over and over again. And so Senate Bill 1319 is moving forward. I think it's a relatively strong bill. It's a relatively reasonable bill. And it aligns pretty well with where the industry is at in terms of taking PFAS very seriously, both as an emerging contaminant on the drinking water side and now more so on the wastewater side. Not really a sister bill, but a separate bill with a local emphasis is the Occoquan PFAS reduction program. This is a bill that was really sponsored by our friends in Fairfax County to protect the Occoquan Reservoir and the drinking water quality that comes out of it. We do have a portion of our service area that discharges to the Occoquan in our Cub Run service area. We did some legwork on this. One, to see what the level of impact would be to our customers, our rate base. There's language in there with respect to MS4. So we did some outreach to the county on that to try to better understand how that may impact them before we take any position on the bill. This bill passed unanimously, appears to be moving forward. It's notable because it's local to us and because we have some portion of our discharge that goes to it. But it's actually I think important to highlight because it is a paradigm shift. This is the first time in Virginia where under this bill, you'll have discharge limitations that are linked to a drinking water MCO. And so in terms of our primacy agencies and the regulations under which we provide our water and wastewater services, this is the first time where we have a parameter from the drinking water side informing regulation on the wastewater side. It's kind of the logical endpoint of one water, integrated water management. We've matured so much in that space, and I think we've probably developed so much in terms of population and infrastructure that that the state is now enshrining these types of protections moving forward. The final bill is House Bill 2482. It's a Procurement Act bill. If you read the summary, it doesn't look particularly pernicious, but what it sets up is a contractor requirement such that anyone that we bring on and their subs would need to provide 8% of their labor through apprentices. So that's, you know, we can think of that shorthand as less experience and in some cases higher cost, right? Slower work as associated with the infrastructure that we build. Really strong resistance to this bill and that particular provision. That bill passed on a party line vote, and its Senate companion did as well, with a delayed enactment clause, which is oftentimes a nice way of letting a bill go forward, but allowing for further refinement and modification of that bill until it becomes effective. In this case, I believe our association partners are going to look for pure exemptions for water and wastewater projects as associated to 2482. And I think failing that, we have a preview of work ahead of us in the 2026 session.
Micah, how are apprenticeships partisan?
Oh, well, that's a trap question.
It's not intended to be. In my mind, I'm not thinking of apprentices or apprenticeship as left or right, Republican, Democrat. So when you said it passed on party lines, I was going, oh, okay.
It's right. It's part of a historical alignment, I think it's fair to say, between unions and the Democratic Party. I think that's revisionist history. And in this case, go ahead. You can do your microphone. Oh, we can't hear you. I apologize. So I think in this case, it's a chance to provide a political good to a base, which we often see in the legislative process. I would just remind folks that if you look at union membership nationwide, it's pretty darn close to a 50-50 split between the affiliations of those members and the parties that they support. I think if I'm looking for a good in this, and I don't like it, this sort of bill is what raised costs for infrastructure projects, which means it raised costs in our service area and for our ratepayers. We need
So
to be on the
is
lookout
this
for that.
tied into union requirements?
It would be, right?
It would be, okay.
You would need to be part of an apprenticeship program to fulfill the requirement or have emerged from the apprenticeship program to fulfill this requirement.
I wasn't connecting apprenticeship with union membership or any of that. So great. Didn't realize that. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think that not just the state, but many others put an emphasis on apprenticeship programs as a way to provide a pathway, right, for certain individuals back into the workforce to build things that we need. And we need bridges between those educational efforts and the real world experiences in which those skills can be applied. I just don't think that this is, and I think our association, right, doesn't think that this is a good version or approach to that problem.
Yeah, and Mike, I want to go back to the PFAS monitoring and the Occoquan PFAS reduction bills. Just curious in terms of Loudon Water's role, are we trying to shape these bills? And if so, what are some of the activities we're doing to?
So for 2050, it was actually a lot of legwork to figure out how we and the county and some other stakeholders would be impacted by it. For 2050, we didn't provide a lot of direct lobbying or direct impact to that particular bill. For that one, I'm raising it because it's regionally important, and two, because it really illustrates a paradigm shift in the way that we're managing water quality on the wastewater side.
So a few considerations on that one. With the Occoquan and our partner in Fairfax Water, we share in the costs of the upgrades that they're going to be on the hook for at their Griffith plant. And so from that perspective, we support this initiative, which is to really, there are known sources and major contributors to the Occoquan for the PFAS levels. And so that's what this bill looks to go after. But we also wanted to be cognizant of, like as Micah mentioned, our discharges into that shed and, partnerships with the county where their, stormwater programs may be impacted. So we were looking at all angles of the legislation and seeking to shape it in that way. But in this instance, there really wasn't a lot of shaping that we really felt we needed to do.
Is Micron the biggest contributor to PFAS in the Occoquan?
Well, I wish I had Bradley Schmitz here. Honestly, that's my understanding, but I can't verify that right now.
Anecdotally, Micron's the biggest contributor. Were they represented down there? Were they weighing in on this?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah. What about salination? We've talked about all this salt. We have these winter events, salt, it gets into the Occoquan, it gets into the Goose and the Potomac. Has there been any regulation or discussion about that?
There hasn't, but I think you can look at something like House Bill 2050 that sets up a regulatory structure around one body of water.
Mm-hmm.
And you, in the political science world, right, you're setting a precedent. And now we know that it can be done for this parameter in this way. Does that open the door for legislative vehicles for other parameters? Perhaps.
Yeah, we had that, what was that nice lady's name from Pennsylvania or something? And she was saying that when salt gets into the water, it's there. I think she was suggesting permanently, which was hard to imagine.
Yeah, at the DWIS meeting.
Yeah.
That you're at. I don't remember who it was that was talking, but yeah,
I think it was from Pennsylvania or something, but she was talking about all the salt that gets in the water
Oh,
supply.
it's been in the regional conversations for several years now, as an issue. Yep.
Huh, but no discussion down there in Richmond about
Not
it.
at this time.
Not even on the radar.
Oh, there's a larger sort of superstructure working group around this where there's ongoing research with respect to the Occoquan. But that research is linked to the state's salt management effort. And I think that needs to yield some products first before it finds a legislative vehicle or another administrative pathway into to limiting TDS.
Now, I guess you have the flip side, which is sure, limit the salt, but then people are gonna be having accidents and,
That's,
you know, it's right,
that's the dynamic. Yep.
right. Too bad.
I was all for it until we had this spate of school cancellations, and now.
Hey, man, you gotta just get those chains on your tires, get those snow tires, get those chains.
That it's no tires.
Yeah, keep the salt out of the water. Great.
I think it's just the questions.
Yeah.
Sorry,
There we go. Does anyone have any more questions for Micah?
Did you take that picture, Micah?
That's a great picture.
It is. It's a beautiful floor there. They've done a nice job.
it's a
Mr. Yudd has
gorgeous
a question.
Mr. Yudd,
Thank you, Chair Allen. Just wanted to say thank you to Micah and the staff team. If you'll recall our discussion last year, we were raising questions about what is the status of legislation that's important to Loudon Water that might be impactful in terms of cost or reporting structure. And I think with this update that we got today, we not only got the overview of the process and the engagement that our staff has through their professional associations, but also the details about the various bills. And so I just wanted to say thank you. If I was there in person, you'd see a big smile on my face for the degree of detail. I really appreciate it. I'll also say that maybe the time will come where there are very serious consequences of pending legislation that you may want the board to be on record for. And, our first meeting in January would usually be too early for the start of the session. And our meeting in February would be past crossover. So maybe we consider distributing this information in an update off the schedule of the actual board meetings, because we'll either be ahead of it or behind it. But I just want to say thank you very much to staff, Micah. That was a great overview. Really appreciate the involvement of our staff in the professional associations and the explanation of the detailed legislation. So thank you very much.
thank you, Mr. Yudd. You did such a great job of encapsulating everything, and I just want to let you know we appreciate it. And thank you. That was a great report, and it is good to be up to date. So thank you, Micah. Water resource by Jessica Edwards Brandt. It's all green dots. So does anyone, how can you have a question when there's green dots? It's only when it's yellow or red is there questions. You could issue that, you could question that, but does anyone have any questions on that report?
Just on page 3. Mr. Chair, just on page 3, the groundwater and precipitation red flags.
Oh, we found some. Those are always red.
Yeah, those remain red. Although they did update this graph just, I think, a few days ago, and now one of the reds is orange. So it's getting better. Improvement.
Is the soil somehow become impervious? Is that why they're?
Yeah, it's the soil. It is like the moisture content or conditions are such that the water is not being able to infiltrate into the groundwater.
But are we, I mean, if we average, 42 inches a year? Are we averaging below that every year? I think we have been
Yeah.
consistently.
Pretty consistently.
So this is going to take a long time to correct. It's not like, because recharge is a slow process, right?
Yes.
Okay.
I really do think it's indicative of the long running average, which I think is covered on the next page, that we're in an overall deficit over the last 12 months, if I'm not mistaken. 12 point something inches below normal over the past 12 months. So,
And it's been that way for 5-6 years, I think, hasn't it?
yeah.
There you go. All right, someone had to bring up some bad news, Mr. Vega.
All right. Engineer.
Just means that Western Loudon and all these systems that are dependent on groundwater are going to continue to be right.
That's true. That's a good point. If this continues, unless we start getting some wet years.
It's been going on for so long and, we keep sinking more wells out there in
Deeper,
Western Loudon.
deeper.
I mean, it's just not a sustainable solution.
All right. On that note, water and sewer agreements for Mr. Tran. Anyone have anything? This is Mr. Vega's report, I call it. When I look at it. It's quite short.
There weren't anything special to note on last month's documents, so I'm happy to answer any questions.
It looks good. I don't see a lot of comments. What do you think, Mr. Vega?
It's even more lovely with the maps and graphs. No, I
right.
appreciate it.
Thank you, Wei. Went on. We're on the quarter reports. BOA, Mr. Lipinski, is he hiding somewhere? I don't see him.
I believe he's at a conference this week.
Oh.
So
So
we can try to fill in as best we can if
I
anyone
don't know
has
that
any
that's possible.
questions.
Got an excused absence.
yeah, I want to see a note.
Yes, I believe he was a moderator at a presentation, so.
All right, well. Yeah, I want to see a note from the conference. Does anyone have any questions on the basic ordering agreements? Any comments that staff wants to make? Anything?
No.
Step out? Okay, just want to make sure.
I will make one comment. I
See?
believe some of these contracts are going to come due for renewal. I believe the first, maybe it's our civil basic ordering agreement contract will be up later this year, followed by early next year. I think the environmental BOAs will be up for renewal. So just a
FYI.
topic of point, yeah.
All right. Thank you. We always like add-on comments. Back to Mr. Tran for the development activity quarterly.
So in the fourth quarter of last year, land development was very busy. Most of the applications we had were commercial and data centers. Also, we had a number of infrastructure projects. If you look at the maps, it kind of breaks down that probably about 75% of the activity were data centers, commercial projects, and also infrastructure projects, which we classify as miscellaneous or other. If you go down to the maps, next page. Yeah. And then scroll down to the last page, which that shows the construction permits that were pulled. And again, that reflects the commercial and data center construction moving forward.
Mr. Chair, I just want to commend Mr. Tran for his outreach calls to industry with MVBIA and NAIOP. And I think the maps were well received, and I think people are have a deeper understanding of kind of our workloads and our shifts in workload and turnaround times and where the work is coming from with the maps. So good job.
Well, it's been a collaborative effort, obviously, Mr. Vega. You've been, hearing the information and working with.
All the credit goes to staff.
I know. I'm going to give you a little bit.
None.
Does anyone have any questions on the land development? All right, thank you. Kendra, operations and maintenance quarterly report. That looks good too.
Yes, this report is great. No violations, but if you can scroll down to keep going. There we go. I cannot wait to update this report for next quarter to update our wastewater flows graphs. So Brian mentioned that we did reach substantial completion on Broad Run. The certificate to operate has been accepted by DEQ. So we will be able to finally increase that capacity because you see our yellow line did hit our red line there for a while. So we will finally adjust that graph, have our extra capacity online as we can watch it grow until we reach that 16.5 line again. But so everybody can look for that one next time. But, you know, we are so excited by the completion of that project. You know, our project managers, our operations, our maintenance team, and the contractor really brought it in well on a huge construction contract through the pandemic. And the facility is, you know, up and running. So it's really a big accomplishment for the organization.
And so we've got 5.5 additional million gallons.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
And then take a breath before the new one starts.
6 months. Yeah, we're good.
That's
A running
crazy.
start.
It's amazing.
That's the falling knife.
But
Yep. Just in time.
all right, there's no rest for the weary.
So everybody can look for that page next time. It'll be very fun.
That'll be great.
Great.
That's great.
Very good.
And then the easiest report ever is Mr. Chunta's safety results. It's good to say that. Hopefully it stays that way. I don't want to jinx us.
That is correct. We did up here on a good note and strive to be below industry standard. And we do a pretty good job at that. And it's certainly based on leadership support of the program, and certainly our field staff, supervisors are all very conscientious about safety.
And how do we pull this off over and over and over again? Is it just policies and training and?
All the above. And I think support's a big part of that. We've got a very good collaboration between our field supervisors and our safety staff that, they're prone to ask questions as opposed to just go ahead and do it or not do it based on issues or concerns.
That's great to hear. It really is. Thank you. Anyone have any questions? I mean, I have half the things on this list myself. I mean, every day. So that's great.
Knee strain, rolled ankle,
I mean,
back strain.
Trigger finger.
bee sting. I've had all these. All right, that's it. We're gonna have a closed session, so take a few minutes if board members want to refill their coffee cups. And thank you, staff. Have a great, it's Friday Eve, so that's right, it's Friday Eve, so have a good.
Mr. Yudd, if you will exit this meeting and go into the closed meeting link that I sent you, we'll meet you in there.
Will do.
Thank you.
Thank you.